Greetings to everyone once again, and here we are once again in the city of Jerusalem, and we continue following the sequence of Jesus' life or of the events taking place during his final week. The last week of Jesus, and now we are in one of the days that is perhaps very strange because just because there is silence doesn't mean that things aren't happening.
Yes, you are absolutely right.
Silence doesn't mean that everything has stopped. Silence can even be worrying sometimes. We're gonna find out in this episode, so stay tuned. Well, Lore, we're walking in this area where we find ourselves in the Mount Zion area. Let's remember Jerusalem is a city of hills. Mount of Olives, Mount Zion, Mount Moriah. And several other hills have their own names, but these are the most well-known in the Bible, right? Mount Scopus is also mentioned there. And in front of us, the cross. Where those doors are, we're gonna go there. We're gonna cross the street. This is the place. That's why I said stay, because this episode is going to be interesting. We're going to get to the doors because we can't go inside. And we repeat again, like we've been saying in every episode, we're recording on days of intense conflict. Here, specifically in the city of Jerusalem. There it is. It says St. Peter and Gallicante there. St. Peter and Gallicantu. What does it mean? Pedro. In the talking rooster, the rooster that sings, the rooster that thunders, whatever you call it, the rooster crowed, there it is. The rooster's crow.
The rooster's crow.
The rooster's crow. St. Peter and the rooster's crow. We are here at this place. Down below, right down there. What I'm going to show you right there is through this camera, which I can use to go in there and show you the structure. This construction is there. We've already seen it more than once. We've already gone in there. In fact, there are some videos we made in a previous series called The Last Week of Jesus, which I recommend you go watch. Because we went to visit several of these places, and one of the places we visited together was this one. We remember this story, the specific name of the place, which is St. Peter and the crowing of the rooster. But that's not the story we're going to remember today. That also happened here. As we said, there are many events that take place in the same physical space. For example, tomorrow we will visit a place where 3 events happened, but we will only remember one. We can't do that because otherwise we'll lose focus on the last week of Jesus. But here we are on Mount Zion, and Jesus will also come to this place, but he will come almost at the end. In the hours before the cross. In fact, he won't come here voluntarily, he will be brought to this place. And why did we say that? When there is silence, it doesn't mean that everything is calm or that everything is still. But actually, silence can even represent danger. It can represent a threat. Because you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. There was a story they used to tell us when we worked in sales, remember? The rat syndrome. No, not the rat. What's it called? The boiled frog. Do you remember it? The boiled frog syndrome.
Of course I remember.
Should we tell them?
It was about if one of us...
Obviously. Tell all of us here.
It was about, it's simply a little story.
A moral lesson.
A moral lesson, exactly. When you want to cook a frog, you don't put it directly into a pot of boiling water, because as soon as the frog goes in, ping, ping, it jumps out and escapes. You simply put it in a pot with cold water and place it over a low flame. And well, the water gradually gets warmer and the little frog doesn't notice until finally it stops swimming because it was slowly cooked. So that's the silence that cooked her. It's a bit cruel.
It's sad, poor thing.
But it's just a moral lesson. It's not that, yes.
But anyway, what we want to say is exactly this, right? It's the silence. Something is brewing. And sometimes it happens to us in our lives. Now then, we are in a place where conspiracy actually happened. This is where the religious leaders conspired the night before. They had already been conspiring.
Yes, exactly, because it was their meeting place where they could gather peacefully because it was their area.
It was their area. Jerusalem, let's remember, for those who study the scriptures, was the place, the epicenter back then, 2,000 years ago, where the religious elite was. Here you would find the Sadducees. They were the elite, the ones who said, "We come from the lineage of Zadok." And it was the priestly lineage back then. Let's remember that those who were priests included Ananias, and it also mentions his son-in-law, Caiaphas. Caiaphas and Ananias were both there. I can't recall which was the son-in-law or father-in-law since the names confuse me, but it says they were present. One of them was handing over the position to become the high priest just at the time when Jesus was there, and he had to preside over the most difficult trial that had ever existed or would ever exist in Jerusalem. And then the Sanhedrin, who were those religious leaders that gathered to deal with religious matters. In fact, I don't know if you know, but to this day, the religious court still exists. Today it's called Beit Din, or Beit Adin, which is the house of judgment where 3 Orthodox leaders sit. The Beit Adin has authority in Israel, but not in the rest of the world, yes.
But they also don't address all the issues either.
No, this is the parliament. Yes, the parliament. This is a democratic country, but pay attention to this. It was just approved, and this is new. For this video we're filming today, it was just approved that from now on, actually, in the next few days, they will have the authority to annul a marriage without the need for it to go through Parliament or Misred PNIM, the National Population Registry Service. So now it goes through them. They're gradually giving them more authority, which could be risky. Because in the long run, what happened 2,000 years ago happens again, which was that they had authority over all the Jews who lived in this area from a political and religious point of view, which were the most important aspects. But they didn't have the authority to harm or kill. They couldn't kill.
They couldn't give the death penalty.
Exactly. That is, the death penalty didn't exist. They could mistreat you, they could punish you, they could send you to jail, but they couldn't take your life. That's what the Romans were for. The Romans were the ones who did their dirty work, of course. The Romans were the ones who could crucify, who could beat someone to death. So what do these gentlemen do? They act according to what they knew how to do, which was to conspire. They had to find a weak link within Jesus' team. There had to be someone. How do we get to him? Notice it's always the same strategy. The serpent, I'm not saying Eve was weak, but I'm saying it always comes at a moment of weakness, because we all have a moment of weakness. Even if you're the strongest person there is. There's a breaking point where you start asking yourself questions. Could it be? Could it be? Or not? Will I be able to keep going this way? So that's a moment when you're in that place of doubt. You have to be very, very careful because a breaking point could come. And that's where the one who had the door open for him comes in. And unfortunately, Judas was exactly in that moment.
Of course.
What brought us to that moment? The Bible doesn't give us concrete details about what happened, but the religious leaders found an opportunity in Judas. And then they said, let's bring him in. Apparently at some point that day, Judas leaves during the day off. What did Jesus have? Because on the 5th day, let's call it that, right? If I'm not mistaken, Jesus stays in Bethany with the disciples. That is before celebrating Passover. He stays with the disciples. And what happens there? Can you remind us? Yes, do you have it handy?
Yes, of course.
When I say it was the day off, it's because on that day there are no biblical records of Jesus being in the city of Jerusalem doing what he usually did.
Sanidad.
Healing, deliverance. The Bible doesn't give us that information. It only tells us that something happened there with them. I think it was exactly that day, the day before, I want to be with family.
And yes, it was also the day when Jesus could be at peace. And the fact of being with family, being with people who love and appreciate him, can also strengthen us. For us too, obviously. So I think that Jesus not only took the opportunity to strengthen himself, but also it's a way of saying goodbye to his closest friends, to his mother. Maybe in the only moment where they could have also had a conversation, because from then on, everything was going to be fragmented. So it's a moment when everyone, I honestly think that period, the time he spent, was handled really well too.
It was the moment when he was able to savor Marta's food.
Yes, that's true.
Where he could truly maybe say to her, look, this is too sweet or this is too salty. Where he could lie down, rest, and talk.
To regain strength?
Yes, it must have been the day of jokes, the day of laughter.
That's true.
The day when nobody wanted to leave that house, right? When I think people started coming in and kept coming in and kept coming in.
Nobody wanted the day to end.
Yes.
It happens to us a lot, right? To us Latinos.
Yes.
They greet you, then take another step and keep talking.
Yes, from the house.
Then they go further. Now we're at the car door and the conversation continues. Specific, we will find this story in Matthew 26, starting from verse 6. And it says, "And while Jesus was in Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, a woman came to him with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume, and she poured it on his head as he was sitting at the table. When the disciples saw this, they were indignant and said, 'Why this waste? Because it could have been sold for a high price and the money given to the poor.' And Jesus, understanding this, said to them, 'Why are you bothering this woman? For she has done a good deed for me, because you will always have the poor with you, but you will not always have me. By pouring this perfume on my body, she has done it to prepare me for burial. Truly I tell you, wherever this gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her.' Thank you."
We could then say, if we follow the chronological sequence, that this happens on the 4th day. Okay. Let's remember day 1. Thank you. Jesus is coming in. He comes to Bethany and then leaves. Son. To the triumphant entry. On day number 2, Jesus is entering the city of Jerusalem. We remember, as we saw before, that he was hungry and saw the fig tree and cursed it. On day 3, he passes by the same place and the disciples find the fig tree dried up. The result, right? And then that's when, later in the afternoon, almost at sunset, they go again to the Mount of Olives and start asking him about the signs of the last days, and they sit around with him. And on this day, he had 2 days where there were miracles, where they tested him, which were day 2 and day 3, when they asked him all these kinds of questions. And if we remember, in the Old Testament, it tells us that, do you remember there was a lamb?
No.
No?
According to the month of Aviv, or Nisan as well, but the Bible tells us about the month of Aviv, which is the beginning of spring, and actually look at how we're dressed. This is spring, nothing about it.
Nothing to do with it.
But it's not like that, huh? It's not like that. We're really surprised. In fact, it's even said that on Passover night in Israel, there's going to be a really heavy rain. I hope it's rainwater. And that this conflict with Iran isn't something they're waiting for on the night of Passover. Meanwhile, the videos will keep coming, and you'll keep watching and enjoying them. To be able to learn all this, and it's really good that you can learn it, right? In summary, what I was telling you is, Aviv, that it was the beginning of the month of spring, as the book of Exodus tells us. And so they were going to celebrate all these days of Pesach, but there was one day, which was the 10th of Nisan, the 14th was Pesach, but the 10th of Nisan was the day when the lamb was brought in for the priest's inspection. And then the priest would take about 4 days before releasing the lamb to the family so that the family could cook it. That lasted 3 days. On the 4th day, he released it so people could cook it. And then it was on the 5th day that the people could finally have it at home to roast it.
Asarlo.
The 4th was the day when they would go to get the little lamb. And actually remember that the 4th day is still the day when all the remains are burned.
Of the 11 things.
Because as we will see in the next episode, that was the day, the beginning of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which means there shouldn't be anything left. How strange that we jump from one image to another.
Right?
This is simply to explain to you what happened to us. We were talking and talking and talking and talking and talking, and at one point we looked at the camera and it was off. It went completely black. So we kept talking a lot. There are 2 theories people talk about. Some say maybe it wasn't important, or others say it was the hand of the devil, right? I don't know.
The tail.
The devil got involved. Anyway, we couldn't keep talking about what we wanted to talk about because it wasn't recorded. And Lore told me, but we didn't say goodbye either. It didn't show us saying goodbye. So actually what we managed to record is what we have, and I hope that what we were able to talk about was a blessing.
Yes, because mostly it was just the goodbye that we needed, which didn't get recorded because we had already finished the topic.
Yes, actually from here now, we are going to the upper room. That is from here, after that conspiracy where they were plotting, now we have to go to the place where that conspiracy becomes reality. It takes shape.
Yes.
Exactly. So let's go there, and that's what we specifically wanted to tell you, and also take the opportunity to say hello, and that we'll see each other in the next episode. So I hope that this week of videos about the sequence of Jesus' last week helps many of you to be able to put the events of the Bible in chronological order, right? I know there are many, but at least we helped with a few to bring a little more light. So greetings from here, and I'll see you in the next video.
See you in the next one. Yes, bye.